That was what the people of the old timers
Oh, does
wanted.
everyone know Cheryl?
No, they're not.
Who's
Your
left?
mother, your mother-in-law
My
said she
mother-in-law.
went to
It's on
school,
now.
Susie.
Hello?
You did it for a reason, you were so
Yeah.
full of shit, that was.
I wanna spend the money.
No.
wanna spend the money.
That's a historic district.
The,
What year is the school made? 1911?
Well, that is part of the historic district,
No.
the thirties there, yes.
Okay, there was a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes. Is there any further?
Oh, my God.
discussion?
You have, you know what, I want.
I'll tell you, yeah, drag me out. That's my bedtime. I know. What I said about.
Alan!
I made it.
What?
You get the call.
Oh, God, look who's here.
Every drag us up here. Come on.
Just a point that the meeting is underway. If this is an audio
Put your mask down, I can't
recording,
hear
it
you.
constitutes the minutes for the time being.
Huh?
So, I'd like to point out that the minutes were moved by Jamie, right, and seconded by,
I received the letter
Sure.
and I just had a
Okay.
little talk with
is there any
Steve.
further discussion on the minutes?
He's outstanding.
Hey, you showed up.
Okay. is
Yes,
my-
Alan came, he came to our
I'll take a
rescue.
vote. Okay, we are in session.
Good.
I will take a vote now, all in favor of the minutes as printed. Aye. Any objections or abstentions? Okay, very good. Thank you. Before I get to the cemetery budget, there are a couple of things. I want to recognize our representative, Ted Connors, of the Selectmen, just to talk a little bit about tax base and tax rate for the upcoming year, because I know that had been an issue in the past. Also, Jamie wanted to make a few comments before we start hearing the budget. So, Ted, if you, you want Martha to fill that in? Please.
In a nutshell, the committee knows that the tax rate was increased by 9 cents from last year. We went from 9.89 to 9.98. So that was good news. As you'll recall, we thought that the earlier predictions were much more sketchy.
What was the change? Like, how did it have such a swing from 61 cents to the 9?
Originally, we expected that the assessed valuation would be a lot more, and it turned out that there were some other properties in town in the industrial and commercial areas that increased, so it helped offset the cost of reduction of EP Newington. And in addition to that, the budget cuts that the budget committee and selectmen made last year for town meetings approval helped the tax rate too. So it's good news.
What that did was basically those budget cuts reinforced our unassigned balance so that we had more money to work with to help offset further increases. So those are the two things, prior savings, which we saved, and the fact that some growth in the industrial section offset some of the loss we had with EP Newington. Just a general point as we go through these things, that money not spent is not money lost.
Right.
It's
That's
something that I try to beat into my federal employees. If you don't spend the money, it goes into the unassigned balance and it's there to use again. It's like a savings for a rainy day. That Maine has a thing they call a rainy day fund. Well, that's what this is for us. It's a rainy day fund. So don't worry about saving money at the end of the year. If you don't have a good way to spend it, save it. If you really need to spend it, spend it. So much for the preaching, this meeting at least. Okay, the next thing, if any further questions up to the selectmen or Martha in terms of tax rates? So
So good. I just
Basically,
love hearing them.
the budget the selectmen are recommending to us, which we will examine and recommend to the town, which becomes the official budget, will be something that we can afford with the 9.98 tax rate. While at the same time maintaining a minimum of $2 million in the capital reserve fund. We need at least 2 million to fund expenses before the January or the December tax payments start coming in. Other cities and towns have to borrow that money. We haven't had that be necessary because we have this reserve. It's one of the good things that the capital reserve does. So enough explanation on that. Any other questions for the selectmen?
So good remembered.
Okay, Jamie, you had something you wanted to?
Yeah, I thought you wanted to do the selectmen first, but I'm happy to just speak now.
Martha's spoke for the selectmen.
That was it? Okay, wonderful. I just wanted to, as we go through all of these line items, over the course of the next few months, I want to bring up again the notion of long-term and short-term planning and discussions. I think it's important to have the long-term goals in mind when we're making short-term decisions about what we're gonna do with our money. So I think we do have these documents and these processes already in our town, the master plan, and then maybe some other plans that are there. I didn't read them all word for word, but I know there are people in this room that know those documents better than I. But I think it is important that the budget committee is very familiar with the long-term master plan, et cetera, as we make our day-to-day decisions. On that line, I think it's important for us to have a process or maybe a tool so that we can quickly align our short-term goals or each line item with the master plan such that we're pulling in the right direction. So when there's a line item number, whatever it is, an expenditure of so many dollars, do we have a thumbs up, this is directly in line with our master plan, this is neutral to the master plan, or this is 180 degree opposed to the Now, there are some times when we have to go opposed in the short term because that's what you gotta do. But we want to minimize the number of those line items that are against the long-term master plan. Otherwise, we'll never reach that long-term goal that we're all shooting for.
Okay.
So if there was a tool or an opportunity such that when we have a line item later on in our discussion, we say, is it with, neutral, or against the plan? That would be a fantastic thing to have. Ideally, someone very familiar with the master plan and someone who was not on whatever committee is being discussed would be the judge of that and be able to provide the budget committee with that thumbs up, thumbs across, or thumbs down, specific to whether or not that item is in line or against the plan. Certainly, we want to minimize Newington fighting against Newington. Tax dollars here making against tax dollars somewhere else in the future. So we just want to be efficient and have a tool to try to stay efficient.
Okay, thanks. The first program is the cemetery budget. You all have a copy of that. We have, I think it's all three members of the cemetery committee. Margaret or Todd, do you want to speak, or Alan?
Alan, do you want,
No,
you want me to talk?
you won't be able to hear me.
Want me to bellow?
You can hear you, Kay.
Oh, no.
I'm just cranking him. I just want to tell you, we had a very successful year. Things went along very well, and the chairman of our cemetery trustees, Alan Wilson, has done an outstanding job with our southerly division, doing the four corners, and the budget we kept in line, and you will all see that we have a draft that's in your packet on our, talk about the, we're taking, money, changing the cemetery general care fund to a capital reserve fund for cemetery maintenance. Well, as we told the selectmen, will be a great, we won't have to raise this money, we have this money sitting there if you want to expand on that.
Well, I had some clarification from Martha saying that the budget committee
Yes.
doesn't really have to vote doesn't come from budget, this is gonna come from the trust fund.
That's correct. It will be a town warrant.
Right.
We do not recommend one way or the other because, as Alan said, it's not an expenditure of new money.
Right.
It's remanaging
Right, exactly.
additional money. I personally agree. I think it's a good administrative move to do that. And I appreciate it, you including it in your packet because it's something the budget committee should know. This is, the money's here and this is how we're managing it.
So, in coming years,
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, and it will be a help in coming years. To make that
Yes.
money more accessible and easier to use than locked up in the current,
And there's things,
Trust fund.
may I expand, Alan, how we were speaking, if you look at our, you know, for the abandoned cemeteries that we maintain, we, by law, as you all know, we've told you this, we have 11 of them, that we have to maintain. And we have some of these stones that are over, so having the money there that we can have to keep these well-maintained, that's our responsibility. Yeah, and then, of course, we clean up, and the main part of the cemetery, that's the town cemetery, kept it in there, town cemetery. Do I sound like a teacher or something? But anyways, this, it's important, we clean our graves, as you see, and Tom Duffy is the gentleman that takes care of all that for us, and we're very fortunate to have him. He's also the gentleman that takes care of digging the graves so we can place cremations and vaults in there.
anybody, yes.
Just a quick question, I know we wouldn't be voting on this fund, but how much is in the trust fund?
about 70, in the trust fund itself, hundred and.
How much in trust fund? 105,
Oh, you mean well, what we take out, they,
The trust fund, the trust fund.
oh, the trust fund right here is what we have over here, Cassie, the trust fund, 98. 98 in there that we would be able to get out.
96,000.
96, you see that right here.
Yeah, $96,481.
The other represents private,
No, I think.
trust funds, which we're obligated to maintain and use, is the, in terms of what's trust. However, Peggy pointed out, state law requires us to maintain these graves anyway, if necessary with tax money. So the fact that we have these trust funds is a big help. It saves us.
He sounds like he's mumbled.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen, good question.
Any further questions for the cemetery committee?
Even though we have one of the biggest budgets, should we go right
Remind me
to?
what Cassie's saying to you, the biggest.
We got one of the biggest ones.
I don't think we have a motion on the floor. So if so, I would accept a motion to accept the budget, yes.
Here's the man.
Maintenance and weed control line.
Road maintenance?
Yeah, the line ending.
Oh, this is, grub maintenance, we have municipal pests, and we have a contract with them, and they monitor the cemetery, and the problem is, we have had grubs that have dug up all the lawn, the southerly division was a mess, there was nothing, because it's a sand, and that's why we have this maintained here, that we do that.
Okay, I was just curious.
You were asking about the supplies,
Yeah.
what happened was that there was, tree work done. Most of the trees that were out, located outside.
Did you finally get the deer that you were looking for? Pardon?
Oh,
The deer that was over, somebody was running with a flashlight.
the land
Land
management.
management.
Okay.
That was last week.
So that one here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on the cemetery budget? I would take a motion that we recommend to move forward to the public hearing, the sum of $20,333 for the cemetery budget. Is there a motion to that effect? Is there a second? John? Yeah, is there further discussion on the budget? All in favor of the, recommending the cemetery budget? Say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. To vote on the cemetery, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, I'll be sitting, Cassie.
The next budget on the agenda is the Historic District Committee.
Cassie, take this and put put this in.
We have,
I'm not sure.
I think we have a representative from the HDC here who might want to say a few words.
I gave her a select.
I
did very well.
Questions.
Oh, you did.
Actually, there's 4 people from HDC here today.
Yes, there are. We're wearing different hats, though. Alan and I are wearing different hats.
Oh, he drives me crazy. He'll age me. It's
The first thing I just wanted to mention is this year's budget, because we've been very successful getting heating and more electrical outlets into the old parsonage. And the whole goal of that has been to make that building more usable. And so we've got our fingers crossed that when the bonfire lights off on the 18th, that building will have heat and more electricity in it. So people will be able to go in and use it again.
Let's remember because of the National Register and because of that, our historical district. Yeah. just-
Exactly, that is one of the buildings on the National Register. So the next thing the committee had a lot of success with this year was the archaeological dig. And I just got the draft report from the archaeologists today. We were looking around the meeting house, inside the cemetery and outside the cemetery, to see where there would be unmarked burials. And she found 3 things. The first is that it's very probable there's unmarked burials around the meeting house, especially on the inside part of the cemetery where it's all flat. And they were able to uncover another gravestone that had fallen over underground that was from 1787. And the other one that is clearly marked was 1743. So those are the oldest burials next to the meeting house. Now, when she went outside the meeting house in the horse sheds, she wasn't able to find anything in the places that she looked that would be something that you'd say a burial took place there. Now, that part of the cemetery was on, the meeting house used to face south, not east. So the unmarked burials could have come around the meeting house as well. And she gives us some recommendations about what we do in that area to preserve the different unmarked burials and any future construction or road work, just to make sure that we don't do anything that would damage anything there. So those were 2 successes. So given that, what we've done is the old parsonage was all paid for with Eversource money, and some of the money in our HDC budget, about $1,700, we saved until the end of the year, so that the whole heating, electricity, and dehumidifier that's going into the old parsonage is all paid for, mostly by Eversource and some out of the HDC budget. So that wiped us out. We didn't have any money for doing any of our wall hangings or historic archives or inventory or anything else. We put it all towards the old parsonage and the archaeological dig. So now let's look at why we're getting into next year's budget and the things that we had asked for. And you've probably seen what the selectmen have recommended quicker than I have, but let me just talk about what is new next year that the committee is requesting. The first thing is we have so many historic records up in the old town hall that are stored in boxes and closets, and literally nobody knows what's in those boxes. Every time I get a request for somebody looking for a picture of the Goat Island Hermit or some house or some study that's being done, you literally spend hours. I spent 4 hours opening boxes, looking through to try to find pictures I know are up there, seen them before, they're there, but I can't find them. You've got people in town willing to do the work, willing to help inventory that information, but you're killing the volunteers. There's only so much you can ask of the volunteers to keep doing all of their free time to try to save buildings, save resources, save history, save records, save artifacts, so that they're in a usable form. So the first time this year, the HBC has never done it that I'm aware of. We're asking for a salary line in the budget. That money is not for anybody on the committee. It's not for anybody in the Historic Society. All of the volunteers will continue to work as volunteers, but we can't do it all. So we had figured in 350 hours to try to see if there's somebody, hopefully in town, that would like to work part-time, that would be 1 day a week, up in the old town hall, to work on helping to inventory, scan, and process some of these documents. So did anybody have any question about that? Because that's the biggest change to what the budget is that we've been requesting.
That line item says 3,500 hours. Is that a typo?
That's a typo. You can give it
Because
to us.
that's a lot of time.
That's about 2/3 of every, that's a typo. You take 350,
350 is 50,000.
350 times 20.
So I actually have a sort of a comment and a question. I think clearly this sounds like it's work that needs to be done. I guess my issue with it is that it's $20 an hour that we'd be paying this person, and that just feels a little high. You know, I didn't know if there's a way we could lower the amount that you're asking for, and I think the selectmen are saying 2,000, and sort of extend it out over a longer period of time. Just because $20 is a lot
Well,
of money to
$20
spend.
an hour is pretty much what the going rate is. We went to UNH and said, if we worked with one of your students or one of the people that are in your library or your archive or your history departments, what would it cost us to have that person help us? The lowest is $20, and it goes up if you want someone that has any degree of expertise on what they're doing. If you go to the temp agencies and say, well, okay, let's not go that route, let's go to temp agencies, you start at the same amount, but what they do is they double it. And so they take the amount of money and they'll say it's $35 an hour, and the person might get $15 or $20 an hour, and the agency's taking the top, 40%. In the climate we're in, and it's only part-time work, I'm really not sure. I mean, if you know, we're asking for help. If you know of somebody that would come reliably and do the work for less, I mean, I don't know as I can find that person. I don't know if I can find anybody. but-
And you talk to anybody that's an industrial labor relations specialist, they would give you the real rundown on this, and then you look at what they're doing at various retail, i.e. down the road here, Whole Foods, the different ones that they do. They were starting people at 13 and 15 an hour. 15 they were giving, some even were getting more, but that is just the way the climate is on, and this is for maybe 1 day a week, and to get somebody to do something for 1 day a week can be, it's not.
Yeah, I just, my opinion is I think that $20 an hour is too rich for the level of skill that's required to do this. That's, my 2 cents.
And the
on
thing
that.
is, you want to be able to get somebody who's efficient enough to be able to work with what we have there. And, and that's what as we evaluated and looked at in my eyes,
And I think the other thing I'd ask all of you to consider when you think of this, there's all of the computer equipment, the scanner, the printer, the software is being donated. We're not asking the town or anyone to buy the equipment. Me will be there side by side with whoever is doing the work for free. And I will also be working. And so that's why I'd say to the committee, you're breaking the back of the volunteers in this town. And the historic archives, the town has saved money for decades by not doing anything to preserve the history. And so yes, we're now at a point where we want to start doing it. If we don't start doing it, I don't know as it will ever happen. But we've saved money for years by not doing it. And so now's the time to work with the volunteers and see if we can make it happen.
Have we asked town hall employees, because I think, Martha, we have 5 various levels of FTEs, right? Could they do some of this work?
You know, the staff at town hall has duties pretty well assigned. Not that I would gladly volunteer too, and of course I need Lulu to.
And actually, I
train me.
would too, by the way. I'm very interested in this topic, so maybe we can talk offline, and I would be very interested in helping out with this. And I wouldn't charge anybody. So, and I'm serious.
The only requirement, and this is so that I don't drive myself crazy, is whoever wants to do it, there's gonna be 1 day a week, every month, as we go through the year. Because I don't wanna get in a situation where I'm running my life around somebody saying, well, I can't come in today, but I can come in Thursday afternoon.
I think you're gonna find that when you have an FTE that's only a couple hours, I don't know how many hours a month it would actually be. I think you're gonna run into that regardless.
It's gonna be a 6-hour day, at least 4 days a month. I mean, the whole concept is to process the documents. So it's not, let's, play around up there drinking coffee. It's like, open the closet door and start bringing out the boxes.
I think Jennifer's bringing up a good point about there may be some other volunteers that we haven't tapped into yet, that can help you, with this wonderful project. There may be some other existing employees in town that, has a little bit, that may or may, be able to help you. And they may not be, but you never know. For example, the fire bell doesn't ring all the time. There may be some people at the fire station that might want something to do for a couple hours.
I know, Jamie,
I don't know,
but
I could be totally wrong on that. I'm sure they have training to do, but you never know. Maybe someone at the library. People are very skilled at preserving documents. That's, I imagine, part of what they're good at. And I don't know if there's a resource that there may not be. You may already have check these, but it's certainly something to look into to see if you can get more help. 'Cause
Here's
it's a
what I'd
wonderful,
say.
wonderful
We have
project.
9 volunteers that just spent 20 hours decorating the historic society. Anybody who wants to volunteer their time to help the society and HBC, we've got all of the projects in the world for people to work on. But there is a critical part that you can't do certain things without a reliable person who's dedicated to that task. And I honestly don't want to spend any time going around begging, Harry, Lowell, Joe, and Louise,
No, we
can you
could
come
put an
to-
ad out that says, hey, we'd like volunteers on, whatever your criteria is. You never know, someone might wanna do that.
I think what you're
Maybe
hearing.
not, but it's
Yeah, I
worth
think
a shot.
What you're hearing from us is, I think that at least some of us who've spoken support the project. But, I think just fewer hours dedicated towards it, and it could be, drawn out a little bit more. So I would be in favor of, accepting what the selectmen proposed, for the 2,000.
And we really can't nickel and dime what we have here, budget committee members. We have a lot of history here in this town. And those of you, and I'm a carpetbagger, and those of you who are born and raised here would certainly wanna preserve what we have in this community. And I worked many years ago with the other people with the HG, and it was a lot of work. And we wanna do it right, just as the proposal is going for. And also on HGC, you understand that our chairman does the minutes, does the agenda.
Not anymore, she
We don't
doesn't.
have a secretary.
Not, okay, that part of this money, Peggy just, I'm sorry, ask your question.
Thank you.
Sorry.
My question is, the persons you've talked to at UNH, the student, is this like gonna be like an internship for a student who's working towards a degree in this field, this type of work? Or are we just getting any student who's willing to come in?
It's
One
the
day.
local historic societies in the Seacoast area have been working with one person at UNH that is running all of the history, archival, informational services, and all of the students in that program.
Okay,
And we'd be working with them.
okay.
But my honest preference is to train somebody in town to do this kind of work, because there's years coming, that there's, this has to be done every year for the foreseeable future. And as soon as you can train people to do it, the better off you are.
Do you have a sense of how many hours it would take to do all of it? Like, I think, Peggy, I know there's a lot of history in this town for sure, so that's kind of where I'm at, like, we're talking a multi-year approach, is it, at 350 hours, are we looking at 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? I just kind of get a sense of what you think can be accomplished in the 350 hours allotted.
The 350 hours this year is just the tip of the iceberg on starting to inventory what's there. Because the inventory step is the easiest thing to do. It's like, here's a document, it gets a number, it gets added in the computer, it gets a description. But where the real value comes out of it is when somebody looks at the document and says, okay, this is the Fox Point building, or this is, what the library looked like, and here's the history of the people. And so that annotation goes in so that it describes, what's the significance of, is it a slavery document? Is it an indentured servant document? Is it a contract that the town had? There's a wealth of information there that is much more than inventory. It's the fun part when you get to that part. But when I say literally there's boxes of this, I'm just talking about the documents. There's all kinds of artifacts, there's the things people have donated over the years that show what the farming community is like, and things from the church. All of those things need to be organized and documented.
Okay, we have now we always work for the selectmen's recommendations. We have a request from the Dark Committee, $7,000, the selectmen recommending $2,000. It's up to us to make a motion on the whole budget.
I move that line item, 110 be increased to 12,000.
So that's a motion from John Chamberlain to increase that line item from the 12,000. References to the construction of the 7. Is there a second on that motion? Second. Okay. Mr. Chamberlain made a similar motion last year, and I think we voted it down because it was too
You
soon.
didn't vote it down, there was no second.
There was no second. There was no second. I think that no one thought that perhaps the town needed more time to think about it. We've had more time. And we're at a place now, 7 and 2 are official recommendations. The someone want to make another motion that might address this, or might split the difference?
I have a question for the chair.
Sure.
Are we currently in a climate where we are needing to be very strict on our budget? Or are we in a climate where we can be less strict on our budget?
Oh, yeah, that's a question for the selectmen as well, and all of us, not just me. I think we're strict every year. We've been strict last year, both in budgeting and expenditure, because of concern over the last years. Now we know what it is. Tax rate wasn't as high as we feared. But we always have to be prudent, because it doesn't mean that the not spend items that we think are worthwhile. You know, there are huge items out there that are out of our control, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So sometimes it's the small items that are very valuable in very focused way that are the hardest to decide. And I can't make that recommendation for people, that's why we're recommending.
Does the selectman have a comment on that question? Did you hear the question?
No, I didn't hear.
I can repeat it. I'm just asking, as we're starting to look through budgets and starting to make difficult decisions on some of these line items, all line items are important. I'd love to have them all very high. However, it's also appropriate to be frugal and keep them very low. Are we in a climate right now where we have to be extra strict with our budgets from the point of view of the selectmen? Or are we a point of view where we're, more strict or less strict, I guess, is the direction
I would say
asking
last
for.
year was one of the toughest fiscal years the town went through.
Yes, I
I
agree.
predict this year to be even tougher, because our valuations have gone down, and, we paid out a lot of money this year, we've adjusted the tax rate. I would say that this is gonna be a real tough year, and that's why we sent out a bulletin 2-3 weeks ago for everybody to cut the budget $450-ish thousand to help get it down so that we could keep it. It's a really tight fiscal year. I
Okay.
think I speak for the board on that.
Thank you for the opinion, that's very helpful, because, when we have these line items, it's nice to know what direction the selectmen think we, need to be in terms of fiscal responsibility, and so that we're kind of all on the same page. We have to probably be more frugal than we would like to be, based on the comment that I just heard. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can I make a comment on that? Each year, in all of the capital reserve funds that we have, and we've got a lot of them, the budget committee and the selectmen will say, we're gonna put $50,000 into this one, 10,000 into that one, 20,000 into that one. That's all money for the future. And that gets spent every single year and funded every year. And so when we come in with a new item that's never been funded, it's awfully difficult to see the town saying, well, all of these future spendings, next year, 2 years from now, or the next time we buy $400,000 of open space, that's important, and we gotta fund that. But we can't fund what is a critical need that hasn't been done for so long. When you have volunteers that want to do it, that are capable of doing it, that are supplying the equipment to do it, and it really raises the question of, why? They're all worthwhile projects, but at some point in time, this budget is an important budget. And the history might not be as important as healthcare today, but who we are and where we came from is vitally important. And you can't just keep kicking that can down the road. That's my 2 cents.
I absolutely agree with you, and I think that's why I don't think, we haven't voted, but I think people are supportive of this program. or this initiative. So I think that it's to the degree of how much money you're gonna put in it. I don't think anyone has indicated that they, don't wanna do this or don't wanna have this done. I know I'm very much in support of it.
We haven't done it this year, but to help the historic district and the people who love history try to preserve things in town, is there a way to start a capital reserve fund that we can start funding so that some of these projects can be done in a similar parallel fashion as everybody else's project, whether it's a police car or a fireman's breathing apparatus or whatever? Because right now, this budget has been $4,800 for years. And we've saved enough money on this budget. And somehow we've got to figure out a way to make the people part of our budget as important as the cars and the trucks and the, sexy, fancy, whatever's.
Well, there is a warrant system, like the cemetery is proposing warrant. Is there still time to introduce warrant?
Yes.
I mean, that might be a good idea. I mean, I hear what you're saying, that, we set aside hundreds of thousands of dollars for fire engines because we know that when a fire engine dies, it needs to be replaced. But at the same time, you would use the same logic and say that we have these historic documents where really are irreplaceable. And if they're gone, they're gone. There's no buying a new one.
That's right.
So it's reasonable, I think, to take that route. And it's something the town could vote on and say, yes, this is important, and we want to put that money aside.
Well, I think, and again, I don't think we can do it tonight, but I'd really ask the budget committee to think. We've got historic buildings that we're trying to fix. There's no capital reserve fund for any of what we do. And it's because for years, people have saved money on all the budgets by saying, well, this isn't important today, maybe in the future. Well, you can't keep doing that. I would definitely support a capital reserve fund that gets funded every year, just like the recreation committee. At some point in time, they get enough money to buy recreation equipment. Well, that's not happening for any of the historic documents or artifacts that we have. I've been at this now, this is my 6th budget committee asking the same question. So I'm kind of getting to the end of my patience on how much time do you want to keep trying to carry this project, any of these projects forward. As I said, you're breaking the backs of the town volunteers.
And that
Go
area,
ahead.
Can I make a motion to increase or to have the line item 110 under the Historic District Commission be the $3,500? I think that this is important. I think that we do kick the can down the road a lot in this town with a lot of different projects and things, and I think that, we're sitting here talking about a relatively small amount of money, and what I would like to do is see what happens. I mean, they haven't been given the chance to go out and try this and see what it yields and get an idea of how long is it gonna take? How in depth is this gonna be? Things like that. And I think kind of, it's half of what they asked for. It's a little bit more than what the selectmen offered, and I think maybe we kind of revisit this in a year and when we have a better idea of where things are going and what it's gonna take. That's
All
my
right,
motion.
is there a second to that? Second, 2 seconds, okay, good. What we're gonna do, any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, so what I'm gonna do then is change the bottom line. We're gonna add 1,500 to the bottom line. So we've got, 16,836, is that
Right.
right?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'd like to do then is, get a motion for the, to include both increasing that line item, the line items are funny, but that's part of the justification. It's understood that's where we expect it to be spent. So that would include, the bottom line would include that. But, let's vote on that first, and then we'll vote on the bottom sum. So there's two separate votes, so you can have another, if you want to. Yeah, go ahead.
Social Security is gonna go down by half as well.
Hmm?
Line 220 is gonna go down by half.
Okay, you got social security on 220 for that?
We can get you that number.
Okay. What's the line item for social security? Oh, I see, FICA, right there, 508.
Whatever.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, something, 10%,
A little bit less.
something. That's, we can make that, I don't know, we add 500 to that. Which brings it up to 17,336.
So that changes the FICA Medi to,
267.75.
so 268?
268?
That's what you need, 268 more?
No, that's a total.
Yeah.
Less, so it'll be a lesser
It's half of
amount.
the 536.
Oh, yeah, 268, not 500.
36.
Okay. All right, so let's vote on that amendment, which includes the FICA as well. We all clear what we're voting on? Moving to 3,500 plus the extra 268. So I'm gonna take a vote on the amendment, there is no further discussion. All those in favor of the amendment for that first line item?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Opposition's good, okay. Now, the bottom line is then, what have we got? 16,836 plus 268?
Minus 268?
The 260 is half done instead of the 5.
You lost me now, it's
So 16,836
plus
minus,
268.
minus $268?
Plus 268, because that was the amount without FICA.
Right.
If you want to add the
Yeah,
268,
but it
it's
was
gonna-
536.
it's gonna come out $17,104, I think.
16,568.
16,568?
I move 16,568.
Okay. Is that the correct number, Martha?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so that's 1,500 extra plus the FICA.
Right.
Okay, all in favor? If any further discussion on the budget?
Need a motion.
The only,
The motion now is for the whole budget, so I'll take a motion if someone hasn't made that.
Right.
the only discussion I would say is that I believe this budget is in line with the master plan. It's not neutral or against it, because our
Okay.
master plan, we want to maintain our history, so.
Good, yeah, definitely. Okay, I'm not sure we have a motion on the whole budget as amended,
Oh, yeah.
so if I take a motion for Martha's
I
amount.
moved it.
Jamie did it.
Jamie moved and there's a second
Emily seconded.
from Alan, okay. So I'll do any further discussion? I would just say that this does not preclude, requesting a warrant for that capital reserve fund you talked about. That's what your committee thinks is important.
If you could, last year we had a warrant article that never made it by the deadline. We submitted it to Martha and it got lost somewhere. So if you can give us the last date that the warrant article can be put in, I mean, as a committee, or put in by petition. I don't know if that's the same date.
Okay, Martha, when do you need that?
That's a date in February, so there's plenty of time.
So the question is that date before or after the public hearing on your total budget for the town? Because last year it was before, no, yeah, it took, the deadline passed before you guys gave the public a chance to talk about the budget.
It's supposed to.
It's supposed to?
You're supposed to get the warrants in before we discuss them.
Okay.
Ideally, next week, if the commission could give us something. The selectmen have already discussed all of the warrant articles, so the sooner the better.
Well, the reason why I'm trying to nail that down, and I'm not gonna take up any more of your time, there's two other points I wanted to make. The grant money for the $8,000 is dependent upon me spending my time writing the grant for free. So whether that happens or not, I don't know. Because there comes a point in time where to get $8,000, you've got to spend $3,000 or $4,000 of your time to get it. And so that's one point. The other point is, we're decorating the town center for the holidays, and just found out from the selectman's office that they have condemned or made uninhabitable the old stone school.
We don't use the word condemn.
Okay, so the only thing I've been able to determine so far is that relates to the steps. The steps going up to the building are not in good shape. And so we are trying to get the committee together to come back and say, what can we do either in the budget this year to fix the steps? Because anybody that visits that part of town sits on the steps or we want to decorate them or use the building. Or if we have to go for a warrant article before the town, do that. So there's a whole series of timing issues, and this just came out of the blue yesterday. So I mean, any help from your committee on how to do some of these things?
Well, I mean, you could submit warrant articles, and some warrant articles are submitted by the town, by the selectmen, and some are just submitted.
So if the
Private.
HDC submits one, when's the deadline for them?
I assume it's the same.
I'm
deadline.
sure the selectmen want it right away.
Yeah, as quick as possible, we review it,
Yeah.
get everything in order, and get it over to the budget committee for everybody to review it.
And so you guys wouldn't get to see it then until the public.
We don't see it,
until
yeah. Well, we discussed warrants during the selectmen's budget.
And when is that?
That's the last meeting, the last budget meeting. before the
So
public.
that's in January. So
We
there's
discuss
time.
it then,
Yeah.
and then we discuss everything again after the public hearing.
When is the selectmen's budget going to be discussed?
I think we've got, 26th? That's the public.
12th, January
12th.
12th.
The
But
12th.
prior to the budget committee discussing this, of course, the selectmen have to vote on it. So we need it sooner than January 12th. The selectmen are giving the full budget book to the committee next Wednesday.
Well, what I'm trying to, because the selectmen just gave this to Peggy today. So what we're trying to figure out is, why is it uninhabitable? If it truly is the steps, what's necessary to fix the steps? And is it going to be in the selectmen's budget for the old stone school for next year, which would be the best way to do it? Or is it something where the HDC is going to have to ask for a warrant article? Or is it going to be a warrant article by petition? So I don't know what, so any help you can give us on what's going on that would be good.
I think Peggy had a long conversation with the building inspector today, and she could,
As I'll tell them right now, so all the budgeteers will know, and the selectmen. 20 years ago, over that, Larry Wall, Ms. Lulu could attest to this, that the building could not be used because it was not habitable, because of the fact of the things inside it and the stairs, remember? And her computer froze. So, over here, the new building inspector, very helpful, very knowledgeable person, said, I did not condemn the building. Just as he stated to me, nobody can go in the building, the stairs, the tiles are coming down, and also going down to the basement, not the condition there that he was very, very concerned about. He so said that to me. So these are things that, if we're gonna preserve a part of history in our historic district, and we need to hold onto this, because the town of Newington was split apart by the United States Air Force. And the reason that Stone School is sitting there, and then the Air Force had that, they built the school down here on Nimble Hill Road, because the students could not be in the school because of the B-52, the bombers. I wasn't here, you know, but you certainly would know, John. You know, John Lamson was in the school. So we're just passing that on to you.
And we agree with the building inspector. The stairs should have been fixed, and we'd like to see them fixed, and we'll help get them fixed, but we just need to know what has to be done. And it would be good to have some money in the budget so that at least the outside of the building is usable.
Okay, normally, building maintenance is in the selectmen's budget, so you've got 3 tracks you can take here. You can have it, ask to have it put in the selectmen's budget, you can do that before the selectmen, or you can do it before this committee when we discuss that part of the budget. The other thing is you can get a warrant through the selectmen to put it up to a town warrant, or you can do a warrant by petition, so you've got 3 options for that.
So the way we'll start, if we're allowed, the best thing is to discuss it with the selectmen and see if it can be in the selectmen's budget.
Right.
But I'm not sure, are we allowed to attend that budget committee meeting and
Of course, it's a
participate?
public meeting.
It is, okay, so, good. So that's the first step. Let's see where that.
What you can't do is speak.
Okay, well,
You can ask questions, but you can't speak. You can speak at the public hearing,
okay.
but you can't participate. You know, that's only the people like yourself now who are involved with that particular budget.
So if they come in and say no, then we're gonna have to go to petition.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to do all 3 things simultaneously and see what happens. I don't know.
Okay,
Thank you
thanks.
very
Now,
much.
if there's no further discussion on the budget as amended, I will take a vote on the budget as amended. Put forward to the public hearing. All in favor? Any opposed? No abstentions? Okay, good. Thank you very much, Lou.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time. I
Bye.
appreciate it. We used to have our class photos taken on those steps. Look back in the archives. Okay, the next item is the, page here. Economic Development Commission. You have someone from the, looks like we do. Now, this budget has gone up $34, I want you to bear that in mind.
I thought it went down. It went down.
Maybe you're right, it went down 34.
Yeah, so we did go
Oh, you're
down.
right, it went down 34.
Right.
Even better.
I just motioned, let's close it right there, we'll just take it and roll.
Do you have any comments on the budget?
Oh, sure. We'd like to, this is Jeff Hyatt here, I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee, and we have Mike Donahue, the vice chair,
Mhm.
and ombudsman of everything EDC for us. So we'll just give a quick overview of what, because one of the questions that always comes up is, what's the point of the EDC? What are we doing? You know, why are we here? All of that. So the EDC wanted to provide a little background on it and what we've been trying to accomplish. As everybody knows, 2020 was very challenging, and 2021 has been slightly better than 2020, but there were still lots of challenges with the economy and everything else going on around town. The EDC was impacted by this as well. The overall goal and mandate of the EDC is to help Newington maintain and grow the Newington advantage. And I was glad to hear Mr. Belanger over there mention the master plan. So the 2020 master plan talks about the planning board and the select board, and there are several Newington advantages that EDC is trying to help maintain. And with that said, one of the advantages is the rural feel and flavor of the town. Another much envied advantage of Newington is the low tax rate that we've been able to maintain. And finally, people treasure the active farmlands that Newington's low tax rate allows to exist so close to the shore, where every other municipality has much higher costs and taxes that are nearby. These were pointed out as key to the resident enjoyment of the town in the master plan that was put forth by the selectmen and the planning board. And that's what our goal is to do. And to do that, the EDC feels like our mandate is to help bring in business and or maintain the businesses that are here. We've spent 2021 trying to accomplish this. And the way we've been doing that, we hosted a 3-part online series of the impact of the tax rate changes and the tax valuations that was mentioned earlier by the selectmen over here, that we've lost tax value, taxable asset value, and that's going to ultimately somehow, some way come home to roost in everybody's tax rate here. The more that we can bolster the current existing businesses that are in town and or bring in new ones, that will help everybody here personally and the business community maintain the tax advantages, which is one of the things the master plan pointed out. Let's see, we had 3 different experienced professionals come in and talk via Zoom to everybody that was willing to listen in on it. And it was just talking about how development works in the greater economy and also on the seacoast. We met with the mall and some of the ownership representatives of the mall. And we talked about the 5 parcels that are there at Fox Run. And Newington Park was recently sold. And we talked to those folks both before and after that transaction. This is directly in line with the Newington EDC goal of trying to preserve and enhance the values of properties in town. Most recently, we were able to host a business appreciation event. In that event, we had about 50 attendees. Those were business folks from either the mall or industry or office property owners. And we were effectively thanking them for sticking in Newington during the bad COVID times and possibly growing. We had some very good conversations come out of that. We had another cementing of the relationship with the Bernie and Phil's folks, because they hadn't had a venue to find out how to get some signage posted that they're looking to do. Minor signage on posts that already exist, but they didn't know how to do it, and we were able to help put that in motion for them. Also, appreciating the new businesses that are coming to town. There's a new cookie company coming over to the mall area called Crumble, and we were helping them. We had a whole slew of businesses. I could name them all, but I don't want to keep you guys here all night. It is in the summary that you probably already have. Let me see. Oh, one of the other things that came out of our work is just discussions on the new overlay district. And the owners and possible developers of some of these properties indicated further interest in how this was done, and that was implemented by the planning board, as I recall. So these conversations are still early and underway. So with the work the planning board did, that should lead to possible interest there. The EDC and the planning board have met with the goal of having a better, more collaborative relationship developed out of our interaction. Part of the delay in that was due to the concern about COVID and whether we were going to do live face-to-face meetings or do them virtually. So that we have gotten that back underway. Let's see here. Mike, do you want to add anything up to here?
No.
We've tried to help with the town website and getting the content related to the business portal. Now reflects the town's good attributes in order to draw potential businesses into town and help to mitigate the somewhat negative reading of some of the federal crime statistics that are skewed because there's so much, let's say, drive-by traffic that makes some of the, let's say, shoplifting crimes at the mall look like robberies in the streets of Detroit or something. So.
They're reported per resident, so.
The rate's pretty high.
It
yeah,
looks
so
scary, but
if you have 10 shopliftings at the mall and you only have 800 residents, it looks like we're just crime city. So we worked on that. Actually, I mean, that came from Mark Phillips, who came to one of our meetings and said, hey, I've been looking at this, and is there something that you guys can do about it? So we worked up at least an explanation.
Yeah, good idea.
The EDC and the Board of Selectmen with Karen Anderson have been able to establish a Newington Business Appreciation Award, if you will, or acknowledgement, and that's gone to longtime businesses like Rockingham Electric, I believe Custom Tools was in there, and there are a bunch of other ones that we've acknowledged as well. Again, thanking them for sticking with us through COVID and also growing and prospering and continue to stay with Newington. We've assisted the Board of Selectmen in supporting the New Hampshire Department of Ports and Harbors and trying to get the $25 million dredging project, which Mike is quite familiar with, to open the turning basin, which gives Newington's deep water port more utility with the big companies that need that kind of water access. We're interacting with other economic development committees and organizations on the seacoast, and the idea of that is that if, let's just say, Exeter has an opportunity that they know of, but they can't place the business in their town, the idea is that with the collaboration we have together, they'll point them to Newington. And so we are working with them on that. And we've taken a position in helping participate and benefit in the new federal regional economic development programs in the Board of Selectmen regarding the Gulf of Maine Blue Economy Catalyst proposal. And I believe that's part of the Build Back Better program, or it's one of the new federal programs that we've been helping keep that ball rolling and support documentation. So we wanted to try and just let everybody know that's what the Economic Development Committee's been up to over the last year. And all that said, we were able to cut our budget by $34. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Okay, any questions specific to the budget?
I have a question. Line 562, dues and memberships. We spent $25 this year on dues and membership with a requested amount of $3,110, which was a 522% increase over 2020 budget with a $160 expenditure. $25 expended this year. Are you really planning to spend $3,000 next year?
Yeah. Let me explain that. And I know it's a good question, obviously. So we were going, at the end of December in 2019, we were about to join the consortium of economic development entities in the Seacoast, which consists of Pease, Portsmouth, Rochester, Dover, and Somersworth. And those are, in terms of, when a company looks to come to the Seacoast, those are our competitors, with the possible addition of Exeter or Newmarket, perhaps. We were cautioned about having an end of the year expenditure at that time, because it was at that time that the situation which, we were sort of aware of. We were the ones that were saying, hey, wait a minute, those plants aren't going to keep being worth what they're worth because of the fact that they're not producing energy. So we didn't expend that money in 2019. At the end of 2019, when we went into the budget, we had it in the budget thinking we'd do it. We found out, at that point, COVID hit. We found out that we would be in a position to participate for free in these meetings that were arranged and facilitated by the Stratford County Regional Planning Commission with the assistance of the State Department of Economic Development. And we were able to have Karen Anderson participate in those meetings. So we held off last year in spending that money. We don't really know whether we're going to spend it or not spend it this year. It depends on whether that initiative that we could get into for free turns out to continue post-COVID. If it doesn't, we're gonna have to do something to be out there. We, you know, when you want to attract the Wilcoxes, we want to convince Northeast Credit Union to go ahead and build their project, for example, rather than, you know,
No, I
not go
agree.
ahead.
I agree with you, it's kind of, you know, if you look at your expenditure.
Right.
Versus.
No, we have never spent the money.
Yeah, it's 1,400%.
Right.
You're right, and for that, we didn't do it for the last 2 years because of the COVID concern.
Right.
And we had the fallback of the freebie. The freebie may or may not continue, is our concern.
Right.
And so we'd like to have that in there so that in the case, which is likely, we're gonna need to be in that
Okay.
consortium.
Yeah, makes
That's
sense.
why it's there.
And, you know, it's a weird situation, no doubt about it. I mean, but,
Clearly, if you can get it for free, you'll get it for free.
oh, absolutely.
We'll go for the track record.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, that's the decision we made. We said, hey, you know, we're getting, and I mean, we helped. We got something for free to begin with, well, for a $50 gift certificate to Stoneface. We got the economic development director from Exeter, who is not in that consortium, to come in and talk to us as a group. And he's the one that made us aware of this. And the result of that was, you know, we got a lot of free counseling through his presentation and professionalization more, I'd say. But we also learned about this group that was free. So we said, okay, free's good. And, you know, the money's going back into the overlay. The selectmen have done very, very well with handling that overlay, setting the amount aside that they did to be able to handle these tax abatements that are, you know, literally staring the town down. So,
Good. Any other questions? Yes, Jennifer?
Yeah, I have a question about the development coordinator position.
Right.
For $6,000. If I did my math right, that's $41.66 an hour, which translates to about almost $87,000 a year in a salary. I realize it, you know, but if you sort of look at it, the kinds of work that position is doing, I guess my question is does it warrant an equivalent of an $86,000 salary? That just feels very high.
yeah. I'll turn to Martha first, and then I'll give you our thoughts on it. But I mean, this is really all coming through the selectmen who have helped us be able to transition from Jerry Coogan to Karen Anderson. We didn't use, just so you know, Karen Anderson, we're gonna end up, who's been doing that job, we're gonna end up, I think by the end of the year, expending the full line item of $5,000. And she had a broken leg for 3 months of the year. So it's likely, we went to 6 because we think that's the time that it will take. That doesn't relate to the $41.
Yeah, my question
No,
is.
I know, but I just want to be complete here.
Sure. And last year, if you recall, I had an issue with Jerry's salary.
Yeah.
I think it was too high for business development salary.
Right, and we made it work. The only thing, you know, as you were confident we would, the only reason there's any money in that consultant line is that had already been spent in December by the time we met with you.
So to address the question about the caliber of an employee that works with the EDC, they're doing everything from writing grant letters, for example, the letter that went out under the selectman's signature recently, to coordinating events for the EDC. They're also sitting in on 4 meetings a month with the other economic development directors in the area, and that's within the range of $40 to $50 an hour for that type of professional coordination for the committee.
So the research.
Pardon me?
That's okay.
What did you say?
Well, I don't feel it's very relevant, was it, Jamie?
No.
Okay. This person is not a volunteer, it's a professional. Yeah.
Now I just totally lost it. Come back to me.
So, I'll just say, we did look at what other communities that have an economic development director. And I'll stop right now. Ask your question.
Sorry, I'm
You
really
know, we wanna
sorry.
keep
I had my
it,
booster shot.
no, we gotta keep you happy.
So we've had some turnover in this position. So what is the plan? Like, I know that there's a lot of turnover everywhere right now, but first we had Jerry Coogan, then we had Karen Anderson, who's now taking a position in Northampton, so.
First, we had an intern that Jen helped us
But we
get.
didn't pay her $41.66 an hour.
No, and she didn't, believe me, she didn't do what even Karen Anderson has done, okay? She didn't work out, really, honestly. She had medical problems too.
So I'm just curious what, it kind of feels like we get somebody and then they do it and then,
Right.
yeah.
And to talk about the EDC consultant at first, the EDC had received a strong recommendation from this committee that a consultant rate at $75 an hour was too high for the position. And so over time, frankly, the consultant was phased out. And fortunately for the town, Karen Anderson was able to fill that gap, having knowledge of economic development in her other position. And similarly, Paul Duchesne, also a part-time employee of the town, will be able to do this work as well. Both of them have done economic development work.
There's just a disconnect for me, because this is a big piece of my position. So I hire people professionally in my professional life, and we don't pay them this. So there's something that's a disconnect for me, because this, the kind of work that is being done here, you can get it for a lot cheaper, and it's just as high quality. So that's just.
Well,
you find that for us?
that's what I wanted to add, that's what I was trying to, we did look at, for example, we looked at Exeter, because we thought it probably pretty comparable. It's not Portsmouth or, not Dover, which I know are more. And, their line item for that department, and there's no staff for that department other than the director, is $115,000.
But that's a director position. This is a coordinator. They're different.
Yeah.
Well,
Levels of
we
work.
tried the approach of the UNH student that you had suggested, and that didn't
I
really work
actually
out.
Well, no, she worked and got them, I mean, she didn't suggest
That was
it.
not my suggestion.
Oh, excuse me, okay. So,
She volunteered and worked and helped get them.
I just think that this is, when you say it's, $6,000, it doesn't appeal like it's that much money. But the hourly rate is high for a coordinator level position, so.
But we're talking about somebody that's gonna represent the town when a business calls up and says they wanna come here. We're talking about somebody that's gonna represent a town to compete with Portsmouth and Dover in those meetings. I mean, it's how you present yourself. It's not just like administrative support. In fact, most of that has been, it doesn't appear in here. It's minutes and stuff like that. Somebody else is doing.
So what types of responsibilities has this person been doing?
Every one of the meetings of that Seacoast group that we described has been attended by, and a lot of them have been Zoom meetings, but it has been attended by Karen.
So I guess
okay, so
attending a meeting, but so what happens when you attend the meeting?
So
You take the information back to the committee?
So here, I'll mention the responsibilities that the Economic Development Coordinator would have, okay? Service staff to the Economic Development Committee's meetings, minutes, agendas, and events. Develop social media presence and updates with photos, stories, and news from businesses regularly. Prepare monthly educational communication for EDC and town e-newsletters highlighting Newington businesses and their success stories. Work with town administrator as liaison between business prospects in the town. That's important to bring in new businesses. Respond to concerns of existing potential businesses regarding town policies that may hinder economic development growth. and report to the committee and town administrator, and then, as necessary, to the appropriate policy-making boards and bodies. Explore potential policy positions that could encourage economic growth. Work with Economic Development Committee and Board of Selectmen to determine best strategy for marketing, possibly to include print, radio, social media marketing campaigns. Actively seek to recruit business prospects to the town of Newington. Develop letters for EDC and BOS to sign, inviting prospects to Newington for a tour. As requested, maintain a relationship with the.
They've got that.
Oh, okay, I thought she was asking what the responsibilities were, so sorry about that, I thought that, so that is what, and it goes on for about a couple of pages.
So just in terms of I mean, this is all about the impact on the bottom line. You're trying to make sure that the expenditure is justified. Last year, with Karen doing it, who was paid less, we're gonna spend $5,000. We realized that she didn't work for a couple of months, and we expect we'll be more active because we won't be as impacted by COVID, variant willing. So we shifted 1,000 from the event line into this. That's the only change. The fact that it turns out to be, we made that decision before we knew that it was gonna be Paul Duchesne. We found out it's Paul Duchesne. We'll make that number work. We've already spent that last year, so I think there's justification for it. I don't think it, we'll probably have to have him do less menial things to make sure we get this in. I don't want to be sitting here with that line item overexpended next year, I can tell you that. That won't be fun.
Any other further discussions on that particular line? Okay, any other discussions on the whole budget?
I had a question.
Sure.
I had a question. I'm curious about the paragraph on the third page where it says the committee also assisted the Board of Selectmen in supporting the Division of Ports and Harbors to obtain federal funding for a dredging project. Could
Yeah.
you explain in what way you assisted the Board of Selectmen?
Sure. We help write the letters that were sent to the congressional delegation. We contacted members of the state legislative delegation because there was a funding gap that the state cost share of this is a quarter of the project, so it's over $8 million. So we made I made these myself, so I feel confident telling you this. We called some of the state representatives that sit on the committee that had to appropriate the money and said what this did for Newington. Because this is a really big deal for Newington, okay? We're talking, there'll be another article in the E-News about this this month. But you're talking about a turning radius that was 800 feet, and you're turning ships in that.
And the importance of it, I want to know what you did.
Just said we did.
Right, so,
I can go on, I can, we talked to Gino Marconi.
you said there was a state.
I went to the
delegation
Pease
in
Development, Peggy Lamson isn't here, but she'll tell you, I appeared before the Pease Development Authority and urged them to appropriate the gap funding that was needed so as to allow it to go forward when they opened the bids, and they were 400,000 short.
So you said there was a state delegation, was that to Congress from New Hampshire? Is that what you mean by state delegation?
Yes, the congressional delegation. There was a letter written from the town of Newington to the congressional delegation, and particularly Senator Shaheen. It's really Senator Shaheen that drove this, making it happen.
So she was one of the members of the delegation?
Yeah, she's a U.S. senator.
I'm just
senator.
curious about what the composition of the delegation was.
There's two senators and 2 congressmen.
I see.
I mean, it's not a foreign delegation, it's,
I just wanted to understand what it was.
sure, sure.
Any further questions?
Just a question. I'm curious if the committee has done any work at, we have a competitive edge of the tax, our taxes being low, things like that. I'm just curious if there's been any discussion with the sewer. The sewer rates continue to be probably one of the bigger deterrents to businesses moving into our town. So I just didn't know if there was, if there's been any discussion about, talking to them or
Oh, yeah,
seeing what- okay,
We
We
met
def-
with them.
okay,
Well, we met with the operator, they sent the operator in to meet with us, but
okay.
we should have a meeting with them and the selectmen and us, and we should talk about whether in the current funding environment, the federal money that's coming out, which is a lot for water and sewer, at least if there's any other improvements that need to be done, we need to figure out a way to pay for them other than on the backs of the commercial users. We have the highest rate in the seacoast. We haven't been able, even with all the improvements Portsmouth's made, they're still way under us. The reason there's a good reason for this. There's a limited number of users. Portsmouth can spread that out, over all the residential users too. We don't have that.
Have we received complaints from any other business
Yeah.
about the water?
Oh, yeah.
No, it's sewer, not,
Sewer.
but it's driven by the water, because they measure it by water consumption.
So I know Stoneface has an issue, but that's, I sort of see that as the nature of their business, because they
Right.
use so much, right?
But we'd like to see Lonza come, we'd like to see Lonza on that Mahoney Trust property, for example. You're never gonna see a biotech manufacturer because they have incredible water needs, and that leads to incredible sewer charges. And we've got to get in this town where there's some kind of incentive actually to add users or use. A company like Stoneface that uses a lot of water and puts a lot into that sewer plant. The sewer plant has plenty of capacity. Now,
And just to add to that Mike's statement, the two malls have also complained about the.
Oh yeah,
rates.
restaurants.
All of the retail is being affected by it as well.
Yeah, it's an issue for restaurants.
What's our current pitch when some business
Yeah.
wants to come here? I know you have.
The elevator,
pages and
what's
stuff,
the
but
elevator, Nick?
You
Yeah.
spoke to a lot of people, is there a slogan, is there a pitch that we can boil down and say, hey, Newington's great and here's why?
We do.
I know from the residential point of view, but I don't know it from a business trying to come here point of view. And that's exactly what you guys are trying to do, right? So
Absolutely.
it's been a couple years now, you should be able to tell us in a sentence or two, here, our pitch is this.
Our pitch is overall this, and it's on the website, so when people land on the website, because that's often where their initial, very first interaction is gonna be,
Yeah.
is that
What's it say in a sentence or two?
we're the Seacoast Business Center. And the idea being, we've got access to the highways, we've got industrial districts, we've got retail corridors and districts. We've got a beautiful community for folks to live in if they want to. We're centrally located to Boston, Portland, and potentially Manchester. We've got an airport right there. So we've got almost anything any business could want to have in a very nice,
Location,
great-
amenities,
pardon me,
And a low tax rate.
low tax rate,
location,
amenities and low tax.
low taxes on a business as well?
Correct, and we've got folks
Yeah.
that can work it that are educated
Okay,
nearby.
so that's a good pitch right there.
Yes.
I don't wanna get too far afield to do your job, Claudia. I think we're only interested that you're spending the money wisely. And it seems, I think we're all agreed that you're doing a good job.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
We work hard, no,
Yeah, right. Are there any other questions on the budget? We will see the sewer commission later on as well. So we can ask them more specific. Okay, I would, if there are no further questions, I'd accept the motion for the amount of $14,610. I've got a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second from John, Chairman, okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, opposed or abstentions? Okay, great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time you gave us to explain what we're doing. Thank you.
I think it's important for us to
Yeah,
know what you do.
we did a poor job at that initially. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item will be the Recreation Committee.
Before we start, just one minute, I think John Lamb and I were two of the last two people in the Old Stone School. It was so great to watch John reminisce about having his mother deliver his lunches through the
I'm sorry,
window.
what's that?
Last time, anybody, last two people, I think in the Old Stone School, you and I.
Could be,
And
it's spinning.
one other person was with us, and John was reminiscing about the old days and having his lunches delivered by his mom. That was really interesting.
Yeah, this is, in the 1950s, there was even more volunteerism. And the parents, which were the mothers back then, would take turns making a hot lunch. We'd bring a sandwich, but the moms would either give us hot chocolate or soup to supplement our cold sandwich. So that was lunch program. It's, anyway, we still have volunteerism, just nobody's making soup, I guess. Okay, Jack, do you have any overall comments on the recreation
Actually,
budget?
Rebecca's the chair, so I'm gonna let her take the lead.
Okay,
I'm just bringing up our budget. I just wanna say, we've done the best we can as far as moving monies to try to keep our, budget expenditures to a minimum. I do wanna add September Fest. It does look like that we were really under budget this year, but we did have a incident with United Porta Potties because it was our first year with them. There was a hiccup. We didn't get, the ones that we ordered. So the quick thinking of our committee, we went and got the ones at the Old Town Hall that have yet to still be brought back to the Old Town Hall by the company. So I'm dealing with them, but we definitely will not be using that company moving further for any more of our events. And so we would have been right on budget with September Fest if we had done that, just so that the committee's aware on that. So please not remove anything from that budget. And our usual activities budget, we did get the extra money for the activities because the town residents did ask for us to hold more activities that were geared more towards adults, not necessarily kids. We started to do more activities and the pandemic hit. So we do really want to continue using that money moving forward to hold these activities. I know that amount was new to us, and we do still look forward to using that to hold activities for all age groups, and we do have many more ideas to do so. We are looking for, we have, I think there's a little more general supplies also in general maintenance that hasn't been removed yet because we just started purchasing for the ice rink. We've already got the liner and that has already been removed, but some of our supplies to build the rink have not been removed yet because those were purchased this past week. Holiday party will be right on budget because Santa is been affected by the pandemic as well, so prices have changed. So that will be right on budget this year, so you are aware. And we look forward to seeing everybody there as well. And as far as our two warrant articles that we've asked for, one is for the recreation director position, and one is for, as far as like maintenance for us to continue with our, we have long overdue on some maintenance of our fields. If anybody drives by our baseball field, that has not been touched in a very long time. We did make some, attempts at contacting the person that used to rent the fields out to see, you know, get some guidance on that. And now that we have more committee members that are devoted to, have more background with those things, we're gonna be, looking forward to refurbishing those places so that it's safer for everyone. And we'll be looking at removing the bridge too and adding to those fields that need the TLC, so to speak. The recreation director position, I think half the budget committee can say as far as the Camp Newington position is in dire need of somebody that the town uses to oversee our camp rather than the Y. The Y is a great opportunity, however, in the last couple of years, we were left last minute kind of in the lurch, so to speak, and I don't want to see us as a town have to deal with that again. And we did have our challenges with the Y as well through some of the camps, and sometimes we do feel we get kind of the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, as far as hiring, because they hire the kind below and then supply Camp Newington. We've had our challenges, we work with them. Kelly has been fantastic, she's the director of the Y, she works with us because this past year she couldn't, the new CEO wouldn't take us on as a camp. So in the place of not being able to take us on, she allowed us to have a field trip every week over there to let the kids come over and swim. So that was kind of her way of mending that, but we don't know for sure exactly if the Y will be taking us on. We had an email to Martha saying they're looking forward to it, but we have no contract negotiations or anything like that. And I think the committee agrees that we need to have really a position that oversees Camp Newington and also helps us with our biggest event of the year is Septemberfest. Ideally, I would love for, the committee would love for us to have a full-time position, but this is, for right now, is more of a part-time, just for the summer to get it started, and we'll go from there. And, so that position could also work with the Y. If we do continue with the Y, the camp director position would already be there as a recreation director. Do the hiring, a lot of Camp Newington this year was based on the Newington Public School, but there are still many families in town that it filled up with that roster based on the Newington Public School, but there's still many families in town too that could benefit from Camp Newington as well if we hire enough time and get counselors and enough time to cover all the families in town instead of having a cutoff, which we do have waiting lists each year.
What do you mean by that, Becky? So when you say a cutoff, is there an age cutoff now, or is it?
It's not age, it's, we just have to, based on how many counselors we have to follow state guidelines on how many campers per counselor. So we had to have 40 this year, but not every day is there 40 kids. So, you know, we had the 42 kids is where kind of we stopped that type thing. And not all campers show up every day, so the average, we were going from anywhere from 20 to 30, but camp went, you know, really well, I would say probably this past year, so, you know, a lot of the kids arrived. So we did really need to have that full counselor staff coverage, and they also go to the library, you know, and so the counselors do have to separate and go, either half of them stay at the library and half of them stay at the old town hall with the rest of the kids. The library, that was new for us this year, where the library asked us to kind of like do the separate age groups, which worked out really well for both the library staff and for Camp Newington staff. Because in the past, the Y, we did have some challenges where the Y counselors weren't supervising the kids, they were running, you know, out of the library, and we met with the Y and, you know, spoke about our kind of, our positives and our negatives, and that's why we kind of decided as a committee to try to have more control over what's going on.
I
I think the ratio by state is 12 to 1, 12 kids to 1, and we try to keep it around 10 to 1.
Yeah, just because for supervision purposes, if, you know, half the group is over at the tree, as we like to call it, you know, over by the lacrosse field, and then half of them are still up doing a craft, it just splits them up, you know, a little further than probably what I would say the age group that we've been getting for staff, you know, was a little also challenging this past year, so we're hoping with this position that we're able to hire somebody more like a teacher or a parent, somebody with, you know, a little more experience, so to speak, and knows ahead of time that, you know, I need a position over the summer since I'm not gonna be at school, or, you know, something like that.
Many, many years ago, the town did have a part-time rec director, mostly involved with the summer program, and some of our adults now were kids back then when we had it.
They had it 40 years ago, I can tell you that, because
Was
it's.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, my son was one of them. Some wives and husbands are still, anyway. And again, people said, where are you getting a figure for? 10,000 is a low number, we think, for one season for an employee part-time rec director. We don't know. I mean, we're shooting for that number, and we have to just cut it. It is ability in, if people, when I first moved to the town, the recreation, well, the town used to own a big van. We went to a play. I met a lot of people in town I'd never known. We went to the sledding place over in Amesbury, that big snow hill, and various things that the rec director, because they were hired to do it, was able to set up more things. Something that a lot of people don't understand is activities. For instance, the trolley history tour we just did. People paid that. That doesn't go to the rec committee. That goes to the general budget, to the general fund. So you might see if we spend $4,000 and we collect $4,000, you're only paying, the taxpayers only pay like $1,000 of it for other interests. The summer program returned well over 20,000. My estimate is close to 22,000 in tuitions. So you see a big number in the summer program, but that's outpay, not what comes back.
So the 34.5 is the total outgo, but you say you recover about half of that?
I got 20, I got roughly.
We get 500, but it can be raised just because we're taking on this new position too. It's something we can revisit.
So the tuition students
raising
pay
it.
100%?
Yeah, and then, we also
Yeah.
offer to, tuition students at the school, we offer the tuition students, to join the camp, because we give deadlines for signups, and if a tuition camper signs up, it's $1,000 per child. So we raise it for non-residents. So, I mean, we range anywhere from 3 to 8 tuition in the last few years. So that, you know, that can add it quickly and cover a lot of the expenditures of what the
So
position
what
were.
was the anticipated revenue? What was it last year, about 20,000? I think last year's not.
Roughly,
15,000.
well, it was 10,000, 1,000 per tuition kid and 500 per knowing kid.
Yeah,
It was 40 kids, so at 500, that would be 20,000. But
yeah, okay.
when we do the Y, they would get half and then they'd reimburse us back. They'd collect the whole thing and give it
So
back.
we all understand that this is gross expenditures and, you know, half of it. or
Yeah,
more than
not,
half of it
you know,
is
it's
covered.
an unusual committee to have something like that. But what we
Yeah.
bring in, we can't keep.
It's kind of like the ambulance. You know, we get money back to support the ambulance.
Certainly there's room to increase the tuition. I'm sure the parents would be,
It's-
I'm a parent of 2 of the kids. I mean, it's a bargain.
And
Certainly
we still get complaints too, but you
Not
go to
afraid.
any other camp and try to get what we charge for our camp for anywhere from 6 to 9 weeks, you're never gonna get that.
You're way under the, what I would say, the market value is.
Yeah.
There's room to grow in terms of how much you charge for that fantastic opportunity for the kids to be there together all summer.
Martha?
The selectmen have voted against this warrant article
Mhm.
for the committees.
Which
Yeah.
one?
Why?
We have received word today that the Y is willing to move forward with having camp here. And there are several other issues that I'm glad to address whenever you want.
Okay, one thing I want to make it clear now too, that I think in the years past, we've always addressed all the warrant articles together. That gives everybody a fair shot. rather than doing it piecemeal. Because the rec committee was here, it was nice to be able to talk to you about the warrant article. But some of our discussion is actually the line item budget as well, the camp budget and how the camp is run. So that part's relative. So what I'd like to do at this point is deal with the budget. And then under other business, if you have further questions on the warrant articles, we can discuss that. But I'd like to get the budget done first. And then the warrant article, as I say, we'll tackle all the others, but since you fellows are here, if you wanna have further questions on the warrant article, we can do that. We just won't vote on the warrant article tonight.
Joe,
Yes,
I think that's nice. I have to ask though, if the warrant article goes one direction or the other, that would have a big impact on the bottom line of the budget.
of course, yeah,
Correct?
it would, yeah.
So it's, you know, if we're hiring, summer camp counselors on the budget versus hiring through the warrant article, that's gonna,
The warrant article, James, just for a rec director, not counselors.
okay. Still, that's gonna impact quite a bit.
Jamie, the way I read that, that would be.
Okay, so let's focus on the budget for now, and then we can go back to the warrant article, if we want to afterwards. Is there any other questions for the rec committee on the budget?
Just a question on the wages and such.
Yeah, I'm sorry, on what?
On wages.
Okay,
So when we look at what we anticipated spending for '22, you're at 34,500. If we add up wages, medical expenses, and what we did spend of the 8,543, so that's lines 110, 220, and 682, it's $36,798. If the town runs its own program, are you anticipating a 6% decline in wages?
This,
When you add that up, that's a 6%
Right,
decline in
and then
wages on an increase in a year.
the budget is also gonna be, there was also a significant, I should mention too, that when we did our hiring, we filled with basically who we had for applicants. And
Right.
the last 2 weeks of camp, we had 2 counselors no-show. So 3 of our counselors were in overtime as
Right.
well for those last 2 weeks. So that is gonna be, I'm just giving
Right.
the committee
I
a
mean, I
heads up
would-
now on why those wages were a little raised too, that it was unexpected. So that's why I'm hoping that maybe if we have this advantage of this position, that we can hire a lot, have a bigger net, so to speak, to work with, rates, pay rates and so on, instead of just going with what we get type of thing.
Right, I would anticipate.
Well,
that
if
you
there's a
would
wide
spend
program,
some-
there wouldn't be wages. If the
Right.
Y's running it, it's a contract through them, and you see all the lines go, you notice the numbers are skewed there? What was, budgeted was like 0 for wages, and we got 26,000. When the
Yeah.
budget was passed a year ago, it was expected the Y would run it, and they backed out.
Right.
So things shifted, total numbers should be close to the same next year, depending on whether we pay them or we
So I
pay.
guess that's kind of my point here, if we were gonna run it, I would anticipate at least the same amount of money we spent this year. So trying to be realistic in budget, I would have rather seen $37,000 requested instead of $34,000 requested. Because whether it goes to the Y or the town hires it, you're gonna have varying of college kids. I have 2 kids in the program, college kids leaving at the end of the year to go back to school. That's not gonna change, you could still have overtime, okay? So that's all, my question was just, are you really anticipating 6% decline, or should we be flat? And say it's 37,000?
In all likelihood, we're gonna have to raise tuition as well to cover.
Well, and if tuition raises, maybe that covers
Yeah.
that gap. It's only 6%, but.
It's the bottom line, if the town appropriates a certain amount of money, and because of inflation and the wide contract is way more than we expected, which is possible, the option is either cut the number of kids, or we can come to the town and ask for an increase. That's happening, that's a possibility.
Right, and you're looking at potentially.
We don't know, we wouldn't wanna cut out some
6%.
Summerfest because of the summer program, we'd have to find the money somewhere, or ask the town for a loan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the budget? I think we're gonna, probably this will be clarified when you make a decision on the Y proposal and that. Sort of thing down the road, maybe.
Can I just, Martha, is that like, was there a contract with the Y, or is that just their word saying, because we've had that in the past, where
I
they said that?
emailed the Y and asked the director, and she emailed today and told us that they would commit to running the program here, just today.
Okay, well, hopefully at least by public hearing in February, we'll have a rough contract that we know we're going forward. Or at worst, come town meeting, because that warrant article will still be on the warrant. And then if the Y dropped out, we can, if something disapproved, it can still pass, or it will go down.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple,
Does the rec
Makes sense.
committee have a preference as to if the Y runs that, or if the rec committee does that themselves? Is there a preference there?
I think what was the pros and cons of it was that, we had our challenges with the Y. It hasn't gone 100% with the Y.
Right.
So that's why I think this is why the committee wanted the position, so that we have a little more of control, so to speak. Also, the position is already hired. They, they can oversee the counselors, and not to mention assist us with the things that need to get done, so to speak, because we're volunteers.
Yes.
And we keep getting pulled in the back because of what's going on, and that's, things are dropping because these things are happening, type of thing. And I don't want risk factors to start, so to speak, because, we didn't take action, type of thing. And I think whether or not the Y is here or not, the position would still help, because whether we run it or Y runs it, there still needs to be a director position, type of thing. And we've already had Y last year say, I'm sorry, last minute we can't do it. And then there's things that have happened, so to speak, when the Y is running it. Kelly's not there full-time at our camp. It's just, who they hired, so to speak. She'll only come over if something, is going on, but she can't always leave Gundalow. So she reaches out to myself or Laura or something like that. So we're as volunteers going over and handling type of things too. So that's.
Okay, let me not get too far afield again. I'll bring us back to the budget. And if there's any questions on the budget, and I don't think the bottom line that first of all, this is a recommendation going forward to the public hearing. So I don't think voting on the bottom line is going to necessarily affect the warrant decision one way or the other. Is there any further questions on the budget?
One question, and maybe it is embedded in here, but maybe when we get to the public hearing piece of this, once the Y issue is decided on, what would be helpful to understand is how much is the Y gonna cost?
Right.
And what are we getting for our money for the
Yes.
Y versus what are we getting if we do it ourselves
Yeah.
with the budget, with the director position?
Yeah.
That would, I think, help us be a little more informed and being able to make a formal recommendation at the time once we know more information.
Yeah.
Because I get your point about you sort of having the control, right? And that's, goes a long way if you can have the control and it's,
Because
making
somebody's
sense.
in the seat, so to speak.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if necessarily it's control as much as somebody's in the seat, we don't have anything to worry, about, so to speak.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they could give us a contract before the public hearing that we've been working, so we know which way we're going, like you said.
There you go. Any other questions on the budget? I would entertain a motion to move the $51,850. That motion, is there a second? Any further discussion on the budget? Now, all in favor? Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. That concludes the rec budget. Is there any other old business? Which would, if we have a final question or not on the, on the warrant, but it sounds like we're gonna know more in a couple of weeks. Okay, if there's no further business, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
That's my job.
Motion? You second. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much, Budget Committee, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
and patience in explaining this.
Good to see you.
How's it going? I'm sure.
No, I remember this.
These guys are doing it already.
Yeah.
They're jumping in, looking over, and we're trying to address it.
I would have heard you.
Oh, no, 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 no.
I have gone recycling and green.
Yeah.